All right, so thank you and welcome to SearchLab. I want to thank you for taking your time this morning. We've got a great panel to discuss scaling your business, but we had a really good partner on this particular Minute Clinic. This is our fourth one in partnership with At Revenue, but we partnered with the North Center Chamber of Commerce on this event. And so I wanted to give an opportunity for Lindsay to talk about the Chamber and all the good work they're doing here in the community.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for being here on this beautiful, cold, gray Thursday morning. My name is Lindsay Emmett. I'm the Executive Director of the North Center Chamber of Commerce. We are the second largest neighborhood chamber of commerce in the city of Chicago after Lincoln Park. We have more than 420 members, and our goal is to connect the neighborhood businesses to the community and to each other. We have a really robust calendar of events and programming for small business owners throughout the year. This is our first event with SearchLab, and we're really excited to partner with them to offer this resource to our members and to other business owners in the area. We have an event next week. Next Wednesday night is our Tri-Chamber Networking Night. It's going to be right down the street at Bealin Brewing. And we're partnering with the Rosso Village and Lincoln Square Chambers on that, so it's a great opportunity to meet your fellow business owners, make some new valuable connections, and we'll see you all there. If you have any questions about the Chamber of Commerce or what we can do for you and for your business, I'd love to meet with you, have a coffee, and talk more. You can come find me after the presentation, and thank you all and enjoy.
All right, so we're about to kick things off. I'm seeing a lot of new faces here, so I wanted to just kind of describe the format. We're going to be talking about a topic today that is really about helping businesses scale. So we help at SearchLab businesses grow rapidly, and so I hope I can be a benefit to the growth discussion. Scaling is something I'm working on now, so I'm also going to be learning a lot, as always happens at these events. The format for the discussion is a question and answer. So in a moment I'll introduce our MC, but I want to encourage you, if you have a question, to get his attention and to offer up any questions you have. We'll stay here as long as we have questions and hopefully help you answer some questions. Jeff Cobbles is our MC and returning champion here. He will be moderating the discussion, so if you do have a question, make sure to get his attention, and we'll be free. If you want to ask a particular panelist a question, also reference them to Jeff before you do so. Without further ado, go ahead, Jeff. Welcome.
I just want to echo the sentiment. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to come and join us. I'm going to take a minute here to introduce everybody and then give them an opportunity to give you a quick idea of what they do, and then we'll dive right into the questions. First person I'd like to introduce is Eileen Lysaught. She's the founder of Lysaught Law Office, and it pioneers a business and employment law value-driven alternative. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I don't know, you just summed it all up. So what I do is you come to me, I tell you how I think you should set your business up. I look at your contracts, or I'll write your contracts, and then I will also help you set up your HR. So if you have questions about how to onboard employees, or down the road if you have questions on how to terminate employees, I'll be able to help you with all of those things also.
All right, thank you, Eileen. The second person I'd like to introduce is the CEO and co-founder of At Revenue, one of only 5 organizations in the country that offers sales training and marketing strategy and implementation all under one roof. Marie Hale.
Hi. So I'll start by saying that we're super cool. Just throw that out there. We really specialize in working with non-traditional salespeople. Anybody here get into business because you really wanted to be a salesperson for the rest of your life? Not you, Megan, put your hand down. As technicians, as business owners, we often don't see ourselves as salespeople, but at the end of the day, if that's your business, guess what you are? And guess who you need to be able to lead in that process? So as we're working with individual owners, firms of up to 350 people, setting up that sales culture and really teaching people to do sales from a place of professional love, we also get that marketing strategy rolling, turn on that lead funnel so that they've got people to close, and create something really cool for small businesses called revenue. It's helpful.
Quite helpful. Thank you, Marie. The final person I'd like to introduce is from Ground Floor Partners. This company helps small businesses, nonprofits, and communities fulfill their vision through focused planning, action, and accountability. Andrew Clarke.
I appreciate being here. So I founded my company because I had made essentially all the mistakes small business owners could possibly make, and I thought I wanted to help other small business owners not make those mistakes. And what I've learned is they don't want to hear it. So that's the struggle we have. But I work with basically three groups. I work with startups, people who are just have an idea, or they've just started the business. I also work with small businesses that are established and have revenue, products, services, et cetera, up to typically 10 million, sometimes 400, 500 million. And then I also work with communities and economic development groups around the country. So we have three revenue streams that are very different target markets, but we found that this way we can balance out the revenue fluctuations and all the problems that small businesses, if we work just with the tiny businesses, we would have, because we get a project, it's done, we get a project, it's done, we get 3 projects, we're done. And we also, another thing we do that's I think a little different from many of the other companies out there that do similar stuff to us, is that we have a very strong focus on sustainability, social justice, and environmental issues. So I work with several nonprofit groups like Food and Water Watch, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, and the American Sustainable Business Council on different things. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So I guess I'll go ahead and start this. I guess I'll throw up the softball and let you guys tee off. Let's just get everybody involved in this one. What are some of the challenges when it comes to growing?
I'll go first. I think there are a lot of things that come with growth, and one of the things that happens, I'm an SEO, so I do different tactics to help web pages appear more prevalently in the search engine results page, and really get more visitors to your website from non-paid organic search. And that's why I started a business, because felt like I was pretty good at that. Once you start a business, you find out that you actually really have to do a lot of businessy things. And so as I was growing, you find out that you're going to have to hire fast, you're going to have to fire fast, you have to make some really hard decisions about how to keep sort of the vibrance of a startup business, make it go, have that energy is really important. But as soon as you kind of see things, so the challenges I've had are you have to try and catch that energy, but also at the same time, you have to make decisions to terminate employees, or to make decisions that if it's not in line with that growth mode, to make really hard decisions quickly to address it. The other challenges I would say are more just nuts and bolts of running a business. So you need processes for paid time off, you need processes for payroll, you need processes for your office space getting paid for. And that all does not come easily to me. So again, fortunately, business grew, and so I invested our money into people who are good at that kind of thing, and really tried to focus on what I thought I would be good at. So it's a challenge, I think, whenever you're passionate about something, which is I am about internet marketing, and I love it. Once you start a business, you find out it's really about running a business a lot more, and you get these brief moments of inspiration from doing that, and then you also get to do your internet marketing at a more high level, which is fun too.
So what I have found is that, similar to what you were saying, if you're not ready to grow when your company needs to grow, you're hindered. So if you get your company set up correctly, like oh, I've got this great product, that's all I'm gonna concentrate on, and then all of a sudden you need 10 people, but you have no idea how to onboard employees, you have no idea, you don't have an employee handbook, so you haven't looked at the Chicago sick leave requirements, and you haven't looked at, am I gonna pay vacation or whatever, you don't even have the information that you need to make an offer to these employees that's legal. Are you gonna hire them all as independent contractors? Well, that's not the way to do things. It's an easy way to do things, but it's probably not legal. So there's questions that if you talk to the right lawyers and you get your risk management in place and your HR in place, then when you're ready to grow and you're ready to take on people, lots of times those, you're ready to go then, and they can also refer you to great payroll people and great accountants and great insurance agents because they work with, like I work with growing businesses. I have those people's available. So if you came to me, you wouldn't have to find them yourself and then stumble across people that maybe aren't great providers because they're out there, unfortunately. So that's mine.
Yeah, and we see this all the time, and we've experienced it. When we started at Revenue, we surpassed our 1-year goal in the first 3 months, which was a deep breath, and you're like, oh, crap. And we also, as we work with clients, especially those that are doing the sales and the marketing, we see them grow 8-10x in under a year, which will take a $100,000 business to $1 million business with 7 full-time employees. And that can be a shock to the system. There's no two ways about it. When you start off, you have all of these theories as to what you think it's going to look like. And then reality is really going to find you in a multitude of ways and show you exactly how wrong you were. So one of the biggest pieces that I see is as businesses are going through that initial growth surge, it's really hard to hand over some of the hats that you've been wearing, right? Because when you first start, you wear all the hats. And you've got to find partners, team members that you can trust and verify, and trust and verify. And so really identifying the things that are in your core competencies, not enough of this, in your core it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Thank you. In your core competencies that also don't drain you as an owner. You are going to be exhausted. It's just what's going to happen. So finding the things that need to be offloaded and then allocating them to the right person is a tremendous value. And don't expect, as you were saying, don't expect that to be internal at first. Chances are it's going to benefit you to have an external professional even set it up for you so that you can then identify somebody within your organization to train into it or leave it on their desk until you are ready to bring it internal. And that's a really great growth strategy. One of the things that we do is we help our clients build marketing departments within their organizations. We want you to let go of our hand. Find a partner that's willing to not only help you set it up, but then give it back to you and be transparent in the process so that you own what you pay for.
Yeah, so since I work with so many different types of businesses, I made a decision a long time ago that I didn't want to specialize in one particular industry or one particular type of business. So we work with spas, salons, we work with marketing companies, we work with manufacturers, we work with food distributors, we work with food, restaurant owners. We don't work with tech companies, we don't work with companies that grow, I think the way most people here are thinking, that want to grow by 1,000-fold in 5 years or something. Most of our companies, they'd be very happy if they grew by a factor of 10 in 10 years. I think everybody said most of the challenges, and my feeling is that just be ready because everything that can go wrong, it will. I mean, just expect it. I think I've seen just about every kind of problem happen with a small business. I mean, fires, floods, the entire staff quits in one day. Software crashes, you get infected by I was personally shut down by Google about 4 years ago when I hired somebody from that I found on the internet in Canada to do some graphic design. She uploaded some graphics to my website, and turns out they were embedded with viruses. I was red flagged. I was shut down for about a week and a half. And at that time, Google had shut off their phone support. They weren't bothering with small businesses like mine. So I just kept emailing them and emailing them and emailing them. Finally, what I did is I just rolled back the site to where I had before any of this happened, and then they cleared me. But I lost a week and a half of revenue. And so really, the thing is, growth is difficult. And most people, 90% of the business, 95% of the businesses that I talk to, they all come to us, they say, we've got this great idea, we've got this great vision, we've got this great company. So what do? We do an assessment, and we start finding all sorts of problems. And it's almost always people is one of the problems, not understanding their customers or their markets, not having the right products, or they have great products, but they're selling to the wrong people, or they're selling at the wrong price, or they're selling through the wrong channels. Technology is a big one, so we're working with a maid service in the South. I'm not allowed to identify most of my clients. They came to us, they were talking about franchising. So we started talking to them. We realized this is not franchisable at your level. You've got to really build this thing up a lot more before you can even think of doing that. So then she came back and she said, okay, forget the franchise. I think I just want to sell it in 2 years. Okay, well, what do you want to sell it for? I want to sell it for, I want to make $1 million. Okay, so then we did some market research. We estimated how big the revenue would have to be, what they would need to do to get there. And then we continued on with our assessment. What did we find? She's using a booking system for her maid service, which is completely, it's a terrible fit. So all of her customer data, like 6 or 7 years of it, is like garbage in, garbage out, because she's, fudged all this stuff. She's stuffed data into the wrong places. So when she gets reports, they're not accurate. They don't really make any sense for her business. So one of the things we're doing is I researched the available software. I found 3 packages that look pretty good, and now I'm going to help them transfer over to this. But it's going to be a several-month process. It's not a trivial thing. So I think the biggest thing, if you want to grow your company and eventually scale it in some sense, is you've got to get the first business going correctly. You've got to get the fundamentals right. And once you have those right, then it's possible. But most people don't do that. They cut corners, they do this instead of that, and usually they run out of money pretty quickly.
And Jack, here real quick, Andrew, if you ever get malware on your site, or any of you get malware on your site, call me, or you can just walk in this door. I'll tell you. You don't need to call customer support. We can fix it.
We can just call you and say, oh, fudge.
Yeah, exactly. Get into Search Council, it'll be done in a jiff. Yeah.
Well, kind of going on what you were talking about, Andrew, what's the most common reasons business owners fail at trying to scale their business?
Yeah, I think I wrote a list here. I mean, really, I think I've seen just about everything. Yeah. So the reasons business owners can't scale the business or don't want to scale a business?
How they fail at trying to scale their business.
Okay. Management problems. So incompetent management, the management team they all start killing each other. I've been involved with several small companies where 2 partners started the company. They never resolved their differences. They never developed really good legal documents to make sure that there was an exit, an orderly exit. They thought, well, we're just going to grow. Well, the growth didn't come. They had a successful business. It was very profitable. But one of them was just acting like a complete jerk, and the other guy had been responsible for developing all of the technology. And he actually built, I'm not supposed to talk about the exact company, but he built these vehicles, by himself. He was an automobile engineer. So they fought for a year, and he brought me in, and I helped them figure out a way out. He eventually bought out the other guy. It was a 6-month legal battle, so the lawyers made some good money. But that's a very common one, management battles between partners. So if you're thinking you need partners, think very carefully about it, and maybe talk to Eileen. Another one is sometimes the trends go the wrong way. I've seen that. I mean, especially with food, because we work with a lot of food type businesses. And so like kale was, the hottest thing in the world, a couple of years ago. Now kale is like dropping. And so people who are in the kale business are getting a little nervous. We work with several family-owned farms that have, they're growing, 500 acres, 1,000 acres of some specialty crop. And now what they want to do is they want to make a value-added food product out of it. So we're helping advise them and figure out how to do this. The problem is that sometimes the trends are there for 2 years and then they go away.
I heard there's a crop that's going to become really popular that probably won't go out of trend for a while.
Michigan just passed it.
Insufficient capital is always a challenge, is getting access to money. A lot of companies, so we worked with another food manufacturer distributor a couple of years ago. They made pizzas and burritos and stuff like that. Very good vision for the company, but they brought in all their family members, and they weren't very competent at it, so that was an immediate problem. They also just decided to set up their manufacturing and production facility in a tiny town in Iowa where there was insufficient labor force. So they could never hire enough people to keep the thing going. Another thing they did is they brought on a very good guy to automate their processes and run the manufacturing. They didn't pay him enough, so he quit. These are all the kinds of things that happen. It can really come out of almost anywhere. But if you just sort of calm down, think about it, back off, you can do it. But that's why I'm so focused on developing a plan, because when we develop business plans for companies, what we do is we sort of do Gedanken experiments, thought experiments. So we say, okay, what happens if this happens? What are you going to do? What happens if you can't get the money from the bank for this facility? What are you going to do? So once they start to think of all those possibilities, then they start to figure out the process themselves, and then they can do it themselves, and they don't need us anymore. But let's see, what's another one? Insufficient supply base. So that's very, very common with food. They need some kind of specialty grain, some kind of niche grain. Well, there might be only 3 farms in the country that produce this, some kind of triticale or something like that. So those things will limit the growth of the company. Sometimes if 2 of the suppliers go down, then they're stuck with one, and then that one can jack up their prices. So these are the kinds of things that happen. Sorry, I'm such a bummer, but.
Well, in a sense, it seems like developing and implementing a strategy that effectively balances short and long-term priorities is key. What kind of tools would you recommend a company use when taking all of that into consideration?
This is maybe a good one for you.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know that this is going to answer your question. So short and long-term strategy, many of the companies that I run into are fairly new. So I'm general counsel for a couple big companies that have been around for a long time, but most of the companies are relatively new or are in a transition phase. And if you don't have the right documents in place, so I'm going to actually jump back to something that you were saying. So you're talking about even having short-term and long-term plans. So most of the people that I talk to don't have a plan. They have a great idea, and their passion is that idea, but they've never sat down and figured out where they want to be in 3 years or where they want to be in 5 years, who their competition is, and I think I'm going to get this great loft space. Well, have you figured out how many of your product X or how much of your service you're going to have to get to even afford that loft space? No. Okay. Well, I've got this great business partner. We are best friends. I don't need any of those legal documents you're talking about. I don't need an operating agreement or bylaws. I don't need shareholders agreement. We're just going to kind of wing it right now because I don't have the money to pay for the documents. And I'm not an expensive lawyer. So I'm not downtown. But the reality is, and what I see time and time again is people that go in with that mentality, it ends up biting them. So, because I don't care how great your friendship is, when money's involved and decisions need to be made, it ruins friendships. Unless there's something that can guide you through when you're running into a headache or running into a wall. So I always tell my clients, and my clients are in the room, are probably like, oh my God, I've heard that so many times. Get your documents in order first and make sure that they say what they need to say now. How are you going to exit this business deal? Are you going to buy something that you need to do what you want to do 10 years from now? Those are the things you really need to ask and get squared away in the beginning, because then when you do get your business plan in place, then you can look at your short-term goals that you have, and hopefully your short-term goals when you're doing your strategy with Jeff? Andrew? Sorry. Jeff, okay. I just met these guys today, so I apologize. But so when you're doing that, your short-term goals are reaching out to your long-term goals, and that's how. So hopefully your baby steps that you're doing now are going to make you reach the ones that you want to reach going forward. So hopefully that answered your question in a really long roundabout way.
Yeah, and I'd like to tag on to that a little bit. Listen, every small business owner has to go through a try it, track it, change it method for a very long time, because the market's going to change, sales processes are going to change. And if you don't have your tools set up effectively, things like a client relationship management tool, where you know what does it take to close a sale? How many times do I have to touch a phone to get a new client? How much money do I make every time I touch the phone? And have a really good baseline for what it takes to get your business stable and in a growth pattern. You won't be able to see the change come before it's already taken you down. And it's not the most fun thing to do. I can guarantee you, we have set up 100 CRM programs for people, and they will ignore it as long as they can because it's not fun. It's not fun. But the data that you put into those things, the time that you invest in making sure that you've got processes for sales and marketing, and that you're being thoughtful about what's coming back out of those tools, is going to help you to continuously paint a picture of what the future, what the present moment is, what the future could possibly look like, and adjust those short-term and long-term goals so that you can be flexible and you can be proactive in where you're going as opposed to reactionary, which is where most small businesses spend their first 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I can add on to that. I mean, I agree with everything both of you said completely, and Eileen said my business better than I do. I think that when I started my company, I wrote this business plan, and I said, this is it, it'll last for 10 years. And then I started working with clients, and I got better and better at what I'm doing. And I realized, no, that's not right. You've got to go back and revisit, adjust your business plan at least once a year if it's a slow-moving industry. If it's a fast-moving industry like tech or something, probably once a quarter. That doesn't mean you have to go in and rewrite everything. It just means you have to go in, maybe adjust your targets because you're not meeting them, or maybe you're exceeding them more. But you've got to really map out a lot of stuff And you've got to look at the past and you've got to look at the future. So you really do have to do this constant sort of touching and checking, you know, are we on track for the long term? Are we on track for the short term?
There was one question, one part of the question was about tools. So I'm kind of really interested in all kinds of tools, and I could tell you some of the things that we use, not that this is the only way you can do this, but it's amazing what you can accomplish with QuickBooks Online, HubSpot, and a whole suite of tools that are sort of industry specific to you. So I learned really quick, I hate finance. If you've heard me talk here before, you know that I talk about that a lot, but I learned really quick that there are certain numbers that you really have to watch. So I work with a lot of small businesses. They don't always pay you exactly on time, and you can get behind. So I learned to be like obsessed with accounts receivable to the point where if you're not just like tracking that like a hawk, it's a really big problem. So a program like QuickBooks Online can help you watch that in real time, and you don't have to wait for something. You can look at it every day and get really interested in it. The other thing that, you know, this is something I learned like fairly recently, but you want to try and have some predictive revenue. It's always kind of an art and a science, but with our HubSpot, I work with Devin on a regular basis about it. I can have some reasonable expectation for how much money I'm going to collect in a month, in 2 months, in the next quarter. And that gets better the more data we collect. And so I really watch, you know, with just really pretty crude spreadsheet work, I can predict that my revenue over time will start to go down if no sales come in. So if sales come in, that's the line that I need to see. And I watch those two things just with spreadsheet work to make predictions about my business. And then all the while, the goal is we want to try and have a system where we can take on these clients and then not have to be, to your point, reactive, hire after we're going crazy. And that can be a challenge too, but those are some tools that I would recommend. She mentioned CRM, ours is HubSpot, and then we use QuickBooks Online, and then a lot of CRM. If it's a lot of spreadsheet work, we can use Google Drive for a lot of documents, but if it's anything where I need like legal work, I send it right to the attorney. So I would send it right to Eileen. And it's sort of like, you know it when you see it, that kind of stuff. But that is something I just sort of, I don't even think about it.
Okay, well, I have a few more questions.
Oh, could I say one other thing? So I used to be a CIO at a commercial real estate company. So I was constantly reviewing software and, you know, managing, you know, multi-million-dollar budget for IT and managing all the staff and everything. And we had 26 to 30 offices at the peak around the world. But I hate software. I hate technology, even though I'm a former scientist / engineer. But I've discovered there are some really good tools out there. So like 2 of the tools that I've started using, well, 3 or 4, I guess, this past year, really transformed my business as I started using Insightly, which is a very simple CRM tool. It's extremely intuitive. It's very customizable.
Integrates with QuickBooks Online.
It integrates with just about everything, yeah. Another one is, for us, I used to have tremendous problems. We'd get somebody to say, I want to hire you. Okay, well, we'll get a contract out to you. It would get lost in the mail. Or it would go in, if we'd sent it by email, it would go into their spam box or whatever. So we started using DocuSign. And now I have everything is done with electronic signatures. I have everything in one place. If there's ever a dispute, I can just go in. I can find that signed contract. I know the exact minute it was signed, by whom, et cetera. It worked. It saved us an incredible amount of money and time. And then I use, Stripe for credit card transactions, and I use something called Harvest for invoicing and time tracking. But you have to find your own thing. But there are a lot of good tools out there. But the thing is, what you don't want to do is you don't want to just grab the first thing that somebody recommended, like me, and say, this is what I need for my business. You have to find something that works for you and for your business. So that means you really got to do some demos, do some testing, ask around, try it out. And if you find the right thing, it can really help transform your business.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we tend to focus a lot on is really understanding a digital culture within an organization before recommending some of those tools. Because trust me, if you guys have a Microsoft brain and we try to make you Google people, your brain's going to shut down and your team's not going to accept it. It's going to be, because you've got to get adoption not just for you, but for the entire team that's participating in whatever tool it is that you're integrating into your organization. So while there's a million varieties and flavors of tools that can help you access the information, being thoughtful about how your brain already works is going to give you a lot of insight as to, okay, does this tool make sense to how I would organically find it? Does it make sense to how she's going to find it if she's the person that I've got to hand off to? And how flat can you get that process? One of the tools that we use, even with our contractors, because we have a hub and spoke model, is teamwork. We know exactly what happens in every single process, what all our interdependencies are, and once a project starts, everything gets put into a timeline with the click of one button on everybody's calendar, and we can see who's responsible for it, what stage they're in, when it's been delivered, and the next person gets activated as soon as that piece is done. That's a pretty good feeling, as if you can ask Megan, who does all of our project management work as the VP of marketing, to be able to know that all of those check marks are taken care of, and you can continue to focus on strategy, scalability, and moving forward. You can also see much more concisely when a process is not working effectively, and then fix it.
Can I ask a question? Because I think this is a great topic. I know when I'm a real estate investor, I'm growing a business in real estate investing, and a lot of times when I talk to people that are already in the business about something technology-wise, how to find leads, how to find property leads, things like that, the question inevitably comes back, which is Google. Well, I Googled something the other day and I'm getting inundated by calls trying to sell me a service that all I wanted was some information. So do you guys have recommendations on where to just start so that we can intelligently Google or intelligently ask questions for things to fill in the gaps so that we don't know what we don't know? Does that make sense?
Honestly, the place that you start is a human who's already doing it. Because if you unleash so one of our clients sells franchises. And the reason that you want to work with him as opposed to going directly to the franchise is if you go to the franchise, what do they have? One thing to sell, right? You want somebody that's got some perspective on a variety of different tools and how they integrate, and it's worth the time and investment to take that one step to get some perspective on it, as opposed to going to a company that only has one thing to sell to you. And that's unfortunately where most of that Googling and trials and all of those things is going to end up. And it also, one of the traps that you'll fall into, and it depends on how your organization works, are you a service business, do you sell product, however that happens to look, the way that things integrate and the levels of service that you need can also be a very heavy price for a small business owner. You can pay a ton for software because, and especially, when we get into, I've seen small businesses be sold Salesforce, which is like, oh my God, I am so sorry they did that to you. That could break your business. And I'm serious, I've seen it happen. Where they could have started with something much lighter and it would have given them better results with adding one little integration into it. But you've got to have somebody that's been through it and stumbled through it and has the broken nose. That's how he broke his nose on software. That's exactly how it happened. To just to be able to give you the insight. Yeah, there's nobody out there that's going to give you a truly unbiased opinion if you ask them about their product.
Yeah. What kind of software are you looking for?
I wasn't even looking for software.
Oh.
What I was looking for was people to be able to find, to market to, quite honestly.
Oh.
I was actually just exploring if I wanted to buy a list.
Oh, I see.
What was the quality of that list? How
Oh, okay, right.
If I was going down
Yeah.
that road.
And it gets really,
Where I wanted to go.
in your industry, that gets really, really tenuous. Buying lists can put you in danger in a few different ways. And so not only can it alert the Google gods that you've done something like bought a list, and they will spank you. But there's also programs out there that will offer lead generation, give you the phone number, but if you ever stop paying them, they take all the information back. So you just rented something that you thought you bought. So you really need to talk to somebody who knows the industry and can speak to exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish and look at the big picture and then narrow down into what will really work for you and get you where you want to go. Because some people are fine cold calling until the sun goes down, which now is like, what, 4:30? That doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah,
So
that's not me. I was trying to just understand more about what was out there, what was offered, how to like fill in what I don't, the things that I don't know that I do know that I don't know, I guess.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Which is probably one of the most valuable business lessons you'll ever learn is what you don't know.
That's right. Thank you.
We've talked about a lot of things, business plans, software, strategies. Ultimately, I'm thinking that a small business at some point is going to want to figure out how to determine the effectiveness of the choices they make. How would you advise them to kind of evaluate that? What metrics should they be looking at? What should they be paying attention to? Like Andrew mentioned, when they're doing our annual business plan review, like how do they determine the effectiveness of the strategies they chose?
Well, I mean, it really, to me, it really depends. I mean, you have to have a goal, and your goal could be wildly different than my goal. If your goal is to merely like enrich yourself or ownership as fast and as rapidly as possible, it's a fairly simple equation, like how much money did I make, how much money did I spend, and what's the difference. If your goal is to do something else, you have to set up ways to measure it. So I'll just talk about SearchLab more generally. We look at revenue numbers, how we're doing on the revenue numbers, and then we're very interested in like saving money, which is odd. I mean, we had I'll just tell a story. It's not necessarily addressing your question, but I think it'd be useful to the audience. Like, we hired a consultant back in the spring, and the first thing he asked me is like, how much money do you have in the bank? And I was like, not a whole lot, like I'll pay for the lunch, and that's about it. But like, we're just kind of like outrunning the beast all the time. And the problem is when we got into one problem where we basically had a slow quarter at the end of the year in 2017, which always happens, and I should have known it, but I thought I was just invincible. And you hired out ahead of it, so now you need access to capital. I was a 1-year-old business. No bank is going to give me a line of credit until I'm 2 years old, or I was brand new. So you got to go to like non-traditional bank. This is the worst time to actually need money, is when you have a problem. You want to take out credit to do something like, I'm going to actually buy this whole building, or I'm going to buy this office from the landlord. That's a good investment. Go ahead and credit for that. You don't want to go into debt because you got a problem. That's not good. And so one of the things that I learned over time is just having money, having a good cache of money. That's what the consultant said, I'll tell you like the exact dollar figure. It's like, if you don't have $150,000 in the bank, I don't know how you sleep at night. Because if anything goes wrong, you have a lot of turnover, or you have clients leave. Like, you need to still pay payroll. You need to figure this out. And you can't then, when you're having a problem, want to go to the bank and say, hey, give me a line of credit, because you're bleeding. That's not good. You want to do that when you're trying to grow. You're trying to take a calculated risk. And so I think over time, I've kind of learned, like, for us, having cash on hand is a really important goal. That's easily measured. Watching our revenue increase is really important to me, because that means that I can hire more people, because I want to do that, and I want to just continue to have a big team. And it's sort of a measuring stick, revenue, but then it's not the only goal that we have. We look really closely at the retention of our client base as a measure of how well we're performing. If our clients are staying with me and I'm retaining them month over month, that's a good sign for me that I'm performing well. And then we have other internal measures. You're a project manager here. Every month you have to tell me how happy the client is. on a scale of 0 to 5, and so I look at all those different measurements as a way to look at it, and then sort of at the end of the year, we'll come up with new plans for the year.
Do you have anything you can weigh in, Eileen, on the legal side of that?
Not so much on the legal, but running a law firm is running a business. So, you know, you have to set, and my law firm's been around for just shy of 10 years now. So, yeah, so if we get past that 3 or 5 year mark, yay for you guys. But the, you know, you set goals, and it's, you know, profit goals, and you have to add, you know, I have to advertise. Was my advertising successful? Did it yield anything? Was it worth the money that I spent on it? You know, and so you look at every different goal you set for yourself and every different plan, and did you get back what you wanted to get back out of it? And if it didn't, then change it the next year until it works. You know, I am not a sales, or well, I guess I am in sales because lawyers,
you are.
that's what lawyers do. Sorry. But, you know, it's not something that I think about. So maybe I should be talking to you for marketing and things like that, but which just sounds so yucky as a lawyer. You know, I feel like I should be throwing my cards out like I'm an ambulance chaser. But no, but I mean, so I know, don't worry. But so it's you know, it's a business, and we have to run it the same way.
Yeah, and I think that some of your KPIs need to be intrinsically tied to your values that you have for your business. You know, our mission is to contribute to the world by making sure that no small business owner has to fail. So if that's really why we're here, to make sure that small business owners have access to education and marketing support and the ability to build past themselves and to be honest with them when we see that they're building a business that's not going to be scalable, which we all know happens a lot because nobody's smarter than the person that started the business, so they should do all of the things all of the time. We align our KPIs, which for those of you that don't know are key performance indicators, to how are we impacting our employees, their families, our clients, their lifestyles, the vendors that we work with, are we bringing additional value to those people? For those of you that work with freelancers and those of you that might be freelancers, that is a very lonely place to be. So we actually have set up performance indicators around ROI, profitability, and all of these other pieces, as well as value proposition performance indicators that help us really know that we're bringing value to more than just the bottom line of ad revenue.
Yeah. I have a question. Andrew, this might be a good question for you. What are, anybody can weigh in, but what are KPIs that aren't revenue focused? I thought that was interesting what Marie said about tying things to her company values.
Well, you know, I think, you know, customer satisfaction measures, maybe lifetime value of a customer, I guess those are still financial. We look at a lot of customer stuff for a lot of our clients because we're working with spas and salons and restaurants, and if they don't have people, you know, give them the good reviews and stuff like that, they're going to go out of business eventually. So we look at a lot of customer type stuff. You know, what if for consulting businesses or any business, one of the things we look at is, you know, what's the lifetime value of a typical customer? You know, how much money are you going to get from them? If it's and we compare that with the customer acquisition cost. You know, how much does it cost you between marketing, sales, and all the other stuff to get a new customer? And then we look at retention. You know, how many of them are retained and staying for a long time? And typically what we find with most of our clients is their customer retention is pretty lousy. They think it's great, but I mean, so like this maid service we're working with, she was telling us that like 80% of our customers were staying on. So we asked her to send us some data. So we went through the data and we found it was like 25%. It's a little different. And so she's losing, you know, 75% of her customers are coming, they're hiring for one cleaning. And then they say no, and she's not checking up on them. That's a real problem. Now she gets very good reviews from the people who stay with her, but she's really missing an opportunity. What's another one I could say?
I think the only other thing I would toss in there too is, especially for those of you that are in service businesses, at the end of the year, how many of your clients did you absolutely love working with? How many of them sucked out loud and you would shudder when you saw their face pop up on your phone, right? And I think that that's a really great soft KPI or a more human KPI to help you understand that you're starting to align more effectively with who the best client is for you. And typically those that are more fun, more joyous for you to work with, you create better results for them at the end of the day. And so it starts a really nice ecosystem of, I'll say it again, professional love. Because there's just simply something that is more satisfying about being able to do a great job because somebody trusts you, you've built a relationship, and you're continuing to monitor what those people look like so that you can find more of those people to work with.
Yeah, I guess I just have one other thing to add on the KPI stuff, because I tend to be a numbers guy. I'm always doing spreadsheets and, was a math major and all that jazz. But think about garbage in, garbage out, because it's easy to generate numbers. If you use any software, you're going to get all this data, especially QuickBooks or something like that. And for the small businesses I work with, a lot of them they'll have hundreds or thousands of customers. Well, if the data they're getting in their system, if they're not weeding it out and cleaning it out and make sure it's clean data, then they run all these reports. Those reports are going to be very inaccurate and misleading, and they can go off in the wrong direction. I mean, that's a pretty well-known problem with like big data, with political. Because I know a guy who does big data analysis for politicians, and so what they want to do is they want to segment out the market. 18-year-old Hispanics who like to eat yogurt on Thursdays or something like that. They really want to drill down as much as they can. But if they're getting data that isn't clean, they can go off in the wrong direction. And that's kind of what happened to Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. I mean, they did not understand that there were a lot of people who were, not being accurate with their poll results. So I'd say garbage in, garbage out is a big problem. And one way to deal with to fix that is keep it simple. Don't track 500 things. Track 5 or 6, and make sure that the 5 or 6 you're tracking the right data and the right parts of it, not just sort of throwing stuff into a funnel and seeing what comes out.
I just have one more question, unless anybody else had one. I kind of want to, this thing's been going through my head this whole time, and I'm surprised I didn't ask it at the very beginning. But how do you even determine if the business is scalable in the first place?
If you get hit by a wine truck, can your business get up and function the next day? If you have to take yourself out of the equation, are you the only person that can provide the services? Have you left enough of a trail, a record of what it takes to run your part? And as you perfect that, then you go to the next role, and the next role, and the next role. And you've got to have a vision of working yourself out of your business. If you started a company that you have to work for forever, all you have done is bought yourself a really expensive job. And that is not a pretty place to live, right? So everything that we do to make sure that we're tracking scalability means that if you can't work yourself out of it, you need to change your business plan. And watch out for wine trucks.
Somebody else like to add to that?
I actually find that a lot of companies just want to have that really high-paying job that, and they don't want to be scalable. But for the ones that come in, what's your plan to get scalable? Like, you may not be scalable straight out of the box. It may take you a year or 2 years or 3 years to even get there, so that you have the support system in place to take over when the wine truck that you were very closely following runs you over. So, but it's all in the plan. It's what you really want to be, and if you've got a great strategy and a vision and a plan, then you can get there. But you have to want that first.
And I think another thing is, what do you mean by scalable? Because, like I said, I used to work with some tech companies, and they really want to grow from, 0 revenue to $100 million in 5 years. That's really massive growth. And some businesses can do that, but most of the companies I work with, they'd be very happy if they could get from 100,000 to 5 million in the next 5 or 10 years, and then they can sell it or they can hand it off to their kids or something like that. But so they're very different types of scalability. So, like, tech tends to be pretty scalable, but believe me, we're going to have a recession within the next year or 2 or 3. At some point. We're in the longest expansionary period in U.S. history, as far as I can tell. I look at a lot of economic indicators. And, the VIX index, a lot of volatility has increased, and there are a lot of warning signs. It's real estate is kind of at the peak, I think. And so a lot of businesses that think they're going to scale or could scale now, in a year, they might run out of financing. The banks will pull back. Investors will want their money back. So that's another issue. And you've got to think about these things before you try to grow. And most people don't. So like the housemaid service that we're working with, I keep talking about that one, but they're kind of a luxury house service. They send in 2 maids. They charge much more than the average. Turns out, I can't say what state even they're working in, but they're working in some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country, where the average house value is over $1 million and the household income is $800,000 or more. So, well, when the economy goes south, they're gonna pull back. Even the wealthy pull back. And so they're not going to hire that super wealthy, that super fancy, expensive maid service. And so that maid service, they have to think about that, because if she did what she wanted to do, I almost guarantee she would fail in a couple of years when things come down. Whereas if she grows a little slower and is a little more careful, she could probably be fine.
I think that the question's kind of makes you think of bad news. So how would you, if you're scalable, how can you handle a recession? How can you handle an important employee leaving? How can you handle phasing yourself out? Like if you're no longer needed, how do you get out of there? But it makes you kind of contemplate the rainy day. I think a lot of what I've learned kind of the hard way is to prepare for it, because it's going to come. And if you can withstand it, your competition maybe isn't doing that. So you can look at it as like a negative, like, oh, we have to save a lot of money. We can't fill the beer keg this month or whatever. Like you got to save. But in reality, if you do this, if you're disciplined, if you do the hard work, your competitors maybe aren't doing that. And so you can be in a good shape when a rainy day does come, to be in a position to buy them, to take their clients, whatever, take their talent, their people. But it is really, I think, to answer your question, it's contemplating the rainy day, the bad news, what comes.
No, I think that's a great point, and I do tend to be a doom and gloom person, I admit it. But you don't have to be doom and gloom, but if you just put on your rose-colored glasses and just think everything's going to work out, it probably won't. Maybe you'll get lucky. But my recommendation is prepare for that rainy day. And the more prepared you are, the more likely it is that you will survive and do exactly what you said. You'll be able to start grabbing market share, buy up your competition, really expand your business. And that's been Warren Buffett's strategy, and he's done pretty well. People were laughing at him up until 2008 and even 2000, where they're saying, well, Warren Buffett doesn't understand technology, he's missed the boat. Well, Warren Buffett's still here, and he's done pretty well. So, being a little bit conservative, a little bit cautious, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it can do you very well.
Well, thanks. Did you?
Well, I just said, I started my business in 2008, and everybody told me I was not very smart. I left a job that, because we adopted a little girl, and it just wasn't going to work with our family situation, the way things were. So I started a business in 2008, and I'm a service business, and people don't hire lawyers as much in a down economy as they do in an up. It's just the reality of the situation. But one of the best pieces of advice that I received was from a mentor that I've had for years, who was actually one of my old company owners, a company that I used to work with. And he said, never take all the cash out of your company. And I do run into clients now that, it's like their own personal bank. They want, as soon as their company, they sell a big deal, they get a big commission, they want to suck it all out. And if you pretend that you're going to have 6 months of really bad business, and you plan, this is part of your business strategy, that you plan to have that much either in a cash reserve or in a line of credit that you've just never pulled down, but it's sitting in your back pocket, and your expenses are, you keep your expenses such that they're not locked into long-term agreements, so that if you need to downsize a little bit from an expense perspective to get through a rough point, those really are the things that will protect you versus your competitors when the economy does go through a downturn, because the economy is going to go through a downturn. So you have to take that into account when you do your strategy and your business planning.
Mark, Eileen, Marie, Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you.